All right, we should be recording. So, hope you guys are having a great day so far. So, let's go ahead and dive into the Q&A. Um, Man, it's been a busy week. I have been I've been really tired this week, and I know exactly why. I haven't been getting as much sleep. Um, I've been really putting sleep a little bit on the back burner just because of how busy I've been with stuff going on with the business and everything, with some really cool announcements coming up in the next couple of months. But also, I have admittedly been just scrolling on my phone way too much at night and not prioritizing sleep. I have a lot of clients who we talk about sleep a lot because it makes a big impact on your fat loss, your recovery, all of this stuff. And it's one of those things that I think um, some people it's really hard to get good sleep just because of their work schedule and family life, all that. But also, I think almost anybody can admit that you probably could improve sleep if you prioritized it more. And I'm one of those people. Spending too much time on my phone, waking up in the middle of the night and scrolling social media, like as I wake up in the middle of the night, and that is not good. Because one, it gets my brain going. Number two, also just like exposing your eyes to that light from your phone makes it harder to wind down and get back to sleep, all of that. So yeah, that is on my to-do list to focus on sleep more next week because I really felt it actually this morning with my workout. My knees were just a little bit achy, quads were a little bit extra sore, and I think it really came down to just me not prioritizing sleep this week, so I'm not recovering as much. So definitely need to prioritize that. But um, January challenge have not tallied the results yet, but we'll be doing that soon, hopefully within the next week, and be able to announce that for all the members of the collective next week. But let's dive into the questions. Have a few questions to answer with this one. So, first one is from Kristen. She asked, so just some background info. She's in the collective and she purchased a nutrition analysis from me. So what this is basically where there will be some things that I have you fill out and track your body weight for a week, and I will give you, okay, here's how I would approach your priming phase. Here's how I would approach your fat loss phase after the priming phase. Here's how I would approach your maintenance phase and give you all those numbers of what I can predict based off of the information I have of how your body would respond. Obviously, like with one-on-one coaching, we're checking in so often where like we're making deviations if things don't go as planned and stuff. But so just some background, she purchased that, so she kind of has this roadmap of kind of where her numbers should be. But she asked this question. She said, I watched the video you sent me with the calories, the phases, and when you say weight staying relatively stable, quote unquote, or consistent through the first 4 weeks, what does consistent mean? Because I see that my weight fluctuates by a couple of pounds. It goes up by a pound, goes down by 2 pounds, up by another pound, sometimes even down by four. What does consistent weigh-ins look like? And how do I know to stop increasing my calories in a priming phase? So basically, she's asking when she is doing her priming phase, and this is going to be really helpful for anybody in the group here doing a priming phase, if you're maybe even just doing one on your own listening. How do I know if my weight is staying stable? And also, how do I know when to stop increasing calories in my priming phase? So, how to know if your weight is stable? You want to take an average of your weight each week. So you want to take a 7-day average, weigh yourself every morning, first thing in the morning, fasted, before eating or drinking anything, after using the restroom, with minimal clothing or completely nude is even better, every morning. That way you have a data point. And then we're going to collect data points all throughout the week, all 7 days, and then take an average of our weight. And that is our average weight for that 7-day period. Week two, we're going to take the same thing. We're going to weigh ourselves every day. And then at the end of the week, we're going to take an average there. And we're going to compare what those averages look like and see if they are relatively the same or if there's a big difference there. On week three, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to take a 7-day average, compare that to what weeks 1 and 2 look like. We're going to do the same thing in week 4 and so on. But that is how you see if your weight is actually consistent or stable. you can't tell if your weight is stable by just like comparing day-to-day weights, because your weight on the scale is going to fluctuate so much on a day-to-day basis just from differences in water retention. Um, like I was talking to another client the other day about this, and 8 ounces of water, which isn't really that much. Like 8 ounces is like this big. If you filled up a glass, obviously depending on how big or wide the glass is, might be filling it up by like 3 or 4 inches, maybe. 8 ounces. Think about a like can of Diet Coke. That's typically 12 ounces. So 8 ounces is even less than that. 8 ounces of water is about half a pound. Uh, 16 ounces of water is a full pound. And think about if you're somebody who is drinking, let's say 3/4 a gallon of water, or even a gallon of water per day. Let's just say a gallon of water because it's a little bit easier. A gallon of water is about 8 pounds. So you have about 8 pounds of water going through your system if you are drinking a gallon of water per day. Now, a lot of times we end up peeing, most of that out, or a lot of that water is used for different chemical processes in the body. We even like breathe out some of the water through metabolism and everything. But a gallon of water is flowing through our system in some way a day if you're drinking a gallon of water per day. So differences in hormone fluctuations, differences in stress, differences in sodium intake, differences in salt, differences in how many carbs you're eating, differences in inflammation from maybe having a hard or strenuous workout. All of those things can play a big role in how much of that gallon of water your body wants to like hold on to a little bit extra until you weigh in the next morning, or until sometime like halfway through the next day, or even a couple of days later. So if your body decides to just hold on to, half of that gallon that you drank that day for whatever reason, your weight on the scale is going to be up about 4 pounds from the previous day. So your weight on the scale will fluctuate so much from water retention. Like I can't express how important it is to realize that. So you're not comparing, oh, Monday I was, 190, and then Tuesday I was 192. So I must be like quote unquote gaining weight, meaning gaining body fat, and I'm eating too much. No, like that means nothing. Your day-to-day weights literally don't mean anything. What's important is what the average weight is doing, not even week to week either, but the trend. Like, even if on week one your average weight was 190 and your average weight on week two was 191, that doesn't even mean you're gaining body fat either. Like, you could just be holding on to extra water weight for an entire week. Like, from working with so many one-on-one clients, especially women, like it's really common for certain weeks of their monthly cycle for them to hold on to an extra couple of pounds of water weight for the whole entire week. And then the week is over with, and then those things get flushed out. Or if you have a poor week of sleep for an entire week, that can cause a little bit extra water retention for an entire week. So even comparing one week to the next week isn't really a clear picture. We want to look at the trend. So if on week one you're 190 on average, and then on week two you're 191 on average, week three you're 193 on average, week four you're 194 on average, because all of those 4 weeks your weight on the scale has been increasing incrementally with that. That's maybe a good sign that we might be putting on some body fat if the trend is consistently increasing over over like a span of multiple weeks. Not always a guarantee that we're gaining body fat. Could be other reasons. Could be just water retention for multiple weeks in a row. Maybe you started taking creatine, so you're holding on to more water there. Maybe you're building a little bit of muscle. Building 4 pounds of muscle in a month probably isn't happening, but other like fluid shifts and things that happen with building muscle, maybe you could see some of that. But we want to look at the average weight. And Kristen, I mean, you have access to the app, so like you can just plug your weight into the app, and there's a section in the app that shows you what your average weight is every week. So that makes it super easy to compare it. And also in the app, there is a graph where you can see like what the trend looks like too, and not only see okay what your average weight differences are, but also is it trending up over multiple weeks, or is it trending down over multiple weeks? So look at the trend, and that will tell you if your weight is consistent or stable or not. And then how to know if you've increased calories as high as you should, especially in your instance when we're kind of getting to the high end of your estimated maintenances. And for anybody listening, let me even just provide more context. When you're in a priming phase and you are kind of building your calories up, every week, you want to build it up to the highest end of your estimated maintenance you can. So if you put your information into a calculator that gives you what your estimated energy expenditure is or the total amount of calories you burn per day, you want to build your calories slowly up to that. Other than looking at your weight on the scale and seeing what that trend is doing to get a picture of, okay, did I build my calories up high enough? You want to numerically look at your calories and say, okay, am I to around that high end of my estimated maintenance? That's a good sign that you probably built your calories up high enough. You want to also think about and monitor, like yourself, how full you're feeling throughout the day and after each meal. If you are still feeling really hungry and you feel like you have a lot of space in your stomach, and on top of that, the weight on the scale is maybe decreasing, or like it's definitely not increasing and it's super stable, and you're still feeling really hungry, that's a sign that maybe you can inch your calories up a little bit higher, and maybe you should go, 100 calories higher than what you originally estimated with your priming phase. Um, if you are feeling super stuffed and really uncomfortably full and you feel like you're force feeding yourself every day, and someone like brings up pizza and you're like, I don't really want pizza. Like, I'm not really hungry for it. When you start turning down those super tasty foods like that, that's probably a good sign that you are nearing the high end of your maintenance, and you probably don't need to go any higher. Like when I do intentional muscle building phases for myself and I like purposely eat a little bit more calories than what I burn, um, over time, I'll like really just not crave like things like pizza really at all. And that's kind of where I'm at currently. Like I've been eating at maintenance or above maintenance for pretty much like the past, I don't know, most of the past year. And like sometimes my wife will bring up getting pizza, and I'm just like so full and satisfied from all of my other like whole food meals. And I'm like, man, greasy pizza, I don't really want that. I kind of want something lighter on my stomach. So if you're finding like some of those foods seem a little less appetizing, and you're on the high end of your estimated maintenance calories that you calculated, along with your body weight is pretty stable, or you're maybe noticing a slight increase in body weight, trend over time, those are all signs that, okay, you probably maxed out your calorie intake. Because what we're essentially trying to do is think about trying to like fill up a glass of water without spilling over, trying to get as close as possible without spilling over. That's basically what we're trying to do with your calorie intake, trying to get it as high as possible without being in a calorie surplus, without eating more calories than what you burn. And we're doing that by incrementally, slowly increasing your calories and allowing your metabolism to adjust a little bit with it. So hopefully that kind of gave you some, tips and everything, Kristen, of how to like measure your body weight, how to know if it's consistent, and also to how to know when you've probably capped off your highest level of calories you can get to with your estimated maintenance, or if you still have some room there. So you want to monitor overall your body weight trend, how full you're feeling between meals, and also the absolute numeric value of like, are you in the ballpark range at least with what's calculated as your maintenance? Like if you are 500 calories under your calculated maintenance and you feel like you are like at your tipping point and you feel like you can't eat anymore, there's probably a good chance, one, you need to kind of force your body to do that and get your metabolism to adapt to it and go longer. Or number two, maybe there's some inaccuracies with our food tracking. Maybe we're eating a little bit more than what we think and actually closer to that number than what we think. So let me know if that helped. Next question is by Jen. So she asked, any suggestions on exercises that you can use kettlebells with? I have a set of 10, 15, 20 that I want to start. So you can really use kettlebells for most exercises that you can use dumbbells with. There's not a whole lot that's different from those, except for like the weight distribution is a little bit different. And for some dumbbell exercises, kettlebells might be a little bit awkward. Like I'm thinking about if you were to do like a chest press or even a shoulder press, because the angle of the kettlebell and how the weight will be kind of dragging down or hanging down, but like your hand is going to be on the handle that's actually technically going to be above like where all the weight distribution is, because the kettlebell's hanging down. It might be a little bit awkward doing something like a chest press or a shoulder press with a kettlebell. Also, like a kettlebell curl, like doing biceps, that might be a little bit difficult and awkward because it's going to like swing a little bit more. But something where the weight is constantly like hanging down, something like a Romanian deadlift, but with kettlebells, or something like a bent over dumbbell row, or something like a dumbbell side raise. Those things, because the dumbbell is always in that hanging position when you're doing that, those probably would feel pretty comfortable with kettlebells, just like dumbbell. I actually really enjoy doing kettlebell side raises. I think it actually helps me to hit my side delts a little bit more than dumbbells, just because of the weight distribution is a little bit more straight down, and the weight distribution can be a little bit more hanging straight down from where like your wrist is with a kettlebell versus with a dumbbell, it's a little bit like out to the side from your hands a little bit more. So I actually like kettlebells a lot for dumbbell or kettlebell side raises. But you can kind of substitute it for those. Maybe you're thinking about doing something that's not necessarily for muscle growth. Like I know some people will do like kettlebell swings and stuff where they're like bending over and swinging the dumbbell in between, or kettlebell in between their legs and out in front of them. Um, that's not really necessarily like a muscle building exercise. That's more for like power and explosiveness if you're trying to train that specifically. A lot of people will do a lot of reps and sets with that for kind of like a form of cardio in a sense. So you could kind of experiment with those types of things, but for the purpose of like muscle growth or changing your body composition, like body composition improvements, using them for things like like kettlebell rows, kettlebell side raises, or like kettlebell Romanian deadlifts could be great. But you just obviously want to make sure you have heavy enough ones to be challenging. Like if you have 10s, 15s, and 20s, that's probably plenty for kettlebell side raises. But depending on your strength level, it might not be heavy enough for like kettlebell rows or kettlebell Romanian deadlifts. So just some thoughts there. Next question. It's kind of just a question I get kind of often, so I wanted to answer this one. Why do I lose weight quickly at first, but then hit a plateau even though I'm doing the same thing? So let's say you start a fat loss phase and you're eating a certain calorie level and you're eating a certain protein level, doing a certain level of activity, and maybe you lose a good portion of weight initially in the short term, let's say in the first couple of weeks, and then the next few weeks after that, things slow down a little bit. So there are two factors in play, and it also kind of depends on what time frame we're looking at. If it's in that like first example that I described, where you lose, let's say, 5 pounds in the first 2 weeks, and then every week after that, you're losing about a pound. The reason why that happens is because a big portion of that initial weight loss that you see in that first 2 week period where you're losing 5 pounds, a big portion of that is just water loss that you're seeing, or your body holding on to a little bit less just food bulk and fiber and food volume in your digestive system. Because if you bring your calories down, there's a good portion or a good probability that you are just eating overall a less volume of food. So you have less food moving through your digestive tract, which takes up a little bit of weight. Also, when you bring your calories down and you keep your protein the same and your fat intake relatively stays the same, the only place for those calories to come from are from carbs. So there's a good chance that when you bring calories down, your carbs just indirectly come down. And it's not that carbs are bad or you have to decrease them for fat loss necessarily, but it's just we don't want to eat too few of fat for hormonal reasons. We don't want to eat too few of protein for muscle building or muscle retention. So carbs are kind of like the thing that usually gets decreased with people. So when you go into a fat loss phase and you bring calories down, let's say you're typically eating 2,000 calories a day, go into a fat loss phase and go down to 1,500, you're probably eating less carbs than before. And what happens when you eat carbs is you actually store water with them. That's why it kind of has the name carbohydrate, and that's stored in your muscle and liver. So when you bring calories down, your carbs indirectly come down, and then you end up holding onto a little bit less water weight. And this is why people who do low carb diets or keto, they'll see like a lot of weight loss on the scale initially. but it's not really a whole lot of fat loss necessarily. It's just that they're going from eating 300 carbs a day, and now they're eating 50, and now their body's holding on to way less carbs because of that. So you're basically losing a lot of water weight. Another reason why you might see a big decrease on the scale initially is your sodium intake or salt intake. So if you're eating 2,000 calories a day and then you bring your calories down to 1,500, there's a good chance that unless you intentionally add salt back to your diet, your salt intake will probably go down a little bit too, because your overall food intake is just lower, and just the trace amounts of salt and sodium you're getting are probably going to be lower with less food. So you're probably losing a little bit of water weight because you're just eating a little less sodium too. So you're eating less sodium, eating less carbs, have less food going through your system at any given point, which like decreases your baseline overall weight by maybe a good bit the first couple of weeks, but like that stabilizes then once you're eating the same calorie level, even if you are losing body fat for multiple weeks after that. And then the extra weight you lose from there, when you go from losing 5 pounds in the first 2 weeks and now you're losing 1 pound on average every week after that, that 1 pound on average each week after that that's likely what's fat loss. But that initial drop, you're probably losing a couple of pounds of fat in that first week, but probably 3 of those pounds are just water drops. So that is like the short-term reason why in like the first couple of weeks of a diet or a fat loss phase, you might see a bigger drop in the scale than multiple weeks after that, is because you're initially just kind of shedding some extra water weight from that initial drop in calories, but it's not actually a bunch of fat loss. Now, long term, if let's say in the first 2 months of a fat loss phase, you lose 8 pounds, and then the next 2 months after that, let's say you do a little bit of a diet break after 2 months, and then you go back into another fat loss phase, and you go back to that same fat loss range of calories you were eating before, and now you're losing a little bit less. And instead of losing 1 pound on average per week, like you did in the first 2 months, maybe you're losing about 3/4 of a pound on average per week. The second 2 month fat loss phase. Why does that happen? So it happens for a couple of reasons. One is when you are eating lower calories to lose weight, like you're in a fat loss phase, eating less than what you burn, there will be some like down regulation or reducing of your metabolism to a certain extent. So a lot of people think that like your metabolism will slow down to match that deficit number. So like if you bring your calories down to 1,200 and you were originally eating 2,000, your body will like match that and only burn 1,200. That typically doesn't happen. But it can adjust a little bit. So if you typically burn 2,000 a day and you then decide to eat 1,500, your body will like obviously like notice, okay, I'm eating less calories than what I burn, and it might slow a few things down. So instead of burning 2,000 per day, you're burning, let's say 1,900 or 1,850. So the deficit you think you're creating, right? You think you're creating a 500 calorie deficit, a 500 calorie difference from what you burn to what you eat, actually turns into a 400 calorie deficit or maybe even a 350 calorie deficit. So that deficit is smaller, and that's going to lead to less body fat loss. And those adaptations where it slows down your metabolism a little bit, those get more pronounced the longer you do a fat loss phase. So that would explain why in the first 2 months, maybe you don't notice a whole lot of like metabolic adaptation, that's a term for it. But after, you get to months 3 and 4, you do experience more of those. And then your fat loss slows down a little bit there. And those are reductions in your metabolism from things like subconscious activity, like blinking, how fast you're talking, how much you're talking with your hands, those types of things, how much you fidget. Like those things will slow down when you are in a fat loss phase or eating less calories than what you burn in some people, and that will cause your deficit to be smaller than what you think. So that's kind of what I'm referring to with your metabolism slowing down. Your basal metabolic rate, so that refers to how many calories your body burns, just like if I were to lay here on this couch and not move at all, and just to like keep my heart beating and all this kind of stuff. That doesn't typically slow down a ton unless you go into like an extreme deficit, but it can slow down a little bit and make an impact here. But most of the impact that I'm describing with this is that subconscious activity, the blinking, how fast you're talking with your hands. Those things are what make the biggest impact in like this time frame of your metabolism slowing down. And for some people, this can be pretty extreme. Like some people's overall calorie burn for the day can slow down by a few hundred calories, even just from them entering a fat loss phase or being in a fat loss phase for too long, because all of these things start to slow down. You start to make less decisions to be active that you don't even realize. Like if you have laundry to do, if you're in a fat loss phase, you're more likely to be like, I don't feel like going upstairs and grabbing the basket. I'll do it later. But if you're in a maintenance phase or you're eating the amount of calories that your body needs and the amount of calories that your body burns per day, you'll have a little bit more energy and you'll actually decide to like go upstairs and get that laundry basket. There was one time where I was in a fat loss phase in college and I was really hungry, just tired because I wasn't eating as much food and had a long day of class. And I drove to the grocery store and I sat there in the parking lot, just scrolling my phone for probably 30 minutes before I actually got up and went into the store because I just didn't have as much energy because had been in a fat loss phase for probably too long. And I noticed that. So those types of decisions too, you'll decide to make less. Like if you have a dog, you might end up walking your dog less when you're in a fat loss phase and not even really realize it that much. Like you'll just be like, I don't feel like doing it today and not do it. Or maybe if you do walk your dog and there's a certain route that you go, and you usually go uphill with them, this time, let's go downhill. Let's go a different route to make it a little bit easier on you. Like you end up making those decisions, and those things add up, to a little bit of an extent every day, and that can make your fat loss be a little bit slower because you're just burning a little bit less calories per day after you've been in a fat loss phase for a long time. So that's one explanation. Another explanation is that once you've been in a fat loss phase for 2 months, let's say, and you've lost 8 pounds, your body weighs 8 pounds less. So it weighs less, it's smaller, so it requires less calories to just function. So it burns less calories throughout the day than when you started your first fat loss phase in the beginning of this journey. Your body at the same activity level, with the same type of workouts, the same lifestyle at 200 pounds is going to burn more calories than your body with the same lifestyle, with the same workouts, all of that stuff held constant, except for now you weigh 190. You will burn a little bit less calories because your body is just overall smaller. So pumping blood through the body is going to burn a little bit less calories. Breathing is going to burn a little bit less calories. Every time you walk up the steps, it's just going to burn a little bit less calories because you're carrying around 10 pounds less of weight every time you do that kind of stuff. Even just like sitting up, like holding posture, like sitting upright, burns less calories when you weigh less because you just are holding up, less of your body. So that explains a big portion of why your fat loss might slow down, even if you continue to do the same thing as your first fat loss phase, is that your overall body is just smaller, so it's burning less calories, so you're in less of a calorie deficit than what you were before. And so in your first fat loss phase, you might be able to eat 1,500 calories and lose a pound of fat consistently every week. In your second fat loss phase, you might have to eat 1,400 or 1,425. Like you might have to decrease it by a little bit to kind of make up for that difference in the calories that you don't burn anymore because your body is just smaller. So that is why things might slow down over time the longer you go. So hopefully this was informative and helpful. I'll cut it off here. I have another question, but I'll save it for the next one. Let me know, how many questions or how long you kind of prefer for these to be. If you like when they're longer, like an hour long, if you like them to be a little bit maybe shorter, like 30 minutes. Because I can kind of come up with some other questions too to make it a little bit longer, or I can, save some questions. If they're not questions submitted from you specifically, I can save them for maybe the following week. So they are a little bit shorter, maybe the 30-minute range. So let me know. Hopefully this was helpful, and I will see you guys in the next one.